Good evening and welcome to the short presentation about my photography. Tonight I'm going to cover the following: my background into photography, how my skills have developed over the past couple of years, my licenseship with the Royal Photographic Society, photographing in RAW and the benefits, the equipment I use, how I showcase my work, and a short slideshow of some of the images I've taken over the past year or so. So to begin with, I'm going to talk about how my interest in photography started. Looking back, it really started from when I was a child, visiting Yosemite National Park in America. I can remember taking lots of photographs, but in those days it was using film, so I could only afford to take a few hundred at a time. In the early 90s I studied theatre lighting design for what turned out to be a short-lived career, following my move to Scotland and then getting made redundant. But I feel some of the skills I learnt then I use in today's photography. For example, light, composition and mood lighting. Over the years my photography slowly developed, but with my wife working and managing a photographic shop in Edinburgh when we met 15 years ago, I really had to show an interest. But when things turned digital, that's when my passion for photography really started, and I began taking photographs of the children as they grew up. Paying modelling fees for the children can be expensive after a while. Around 3 years ago was when my photography turned serious, and I purchased my first digital SLR, the Nikon D3200. I started to visit locations up in the Highlands like Glencoe and Aviemore, and that's when my passion for landscape photography started. So moving on to how my photography has developed over the past few years. Well, I'm a self-taught photographer. I haven't been to college to study photography. I've just learnt through reading the various articles in the magazines I subscribe to, watching DVDs and videos on YouTube. Also obtaining valuable feedback from the entries into photographic competitions and out on location with other photographers. I'm also a member of the Edinburgh Photographers Meetup group, which has been very useful. But not forgetting my wife with her experience and my father-in-law, a former lecturer in photography. But my biggest learning has been through just trial and error. Over the past year or so, I've managed to move away from the automatic option on the dial to manual. I've also learnt new tools in Photoshop and Lightroom, but shooting in RAW has been the biggest move for me in the past year or so, and I have to say I was a little nervous about trying it to begin with, but an article in a magazine I read was very helpful. I've also developed a keen interest in the use of filters, doing long exposures, and I've recently bought myself my first 10-stop filter. Next on the agenda tonight is the Royal Photographic Society. I was keen to explore, with like-minded people, just how well my photography was doing, and having the recognition with the Royal Photographic Society was perhaps one way to achieve that. There are 3 levels of achievement with the Royal Photographic Society. There is the licenseship, the associateship, and the fellowship. The RPS offer a variety of ways to support you through the application process, from support days to viewing previous successful entries and attending the assessment day itself, although the assessment days are often held down south. The entry requirements for the licenseship are as follows: 10 prints, or 10 DPIs, or a book containing 20 images, or a multimedia presentation lasting about 12 minutes, or a qualification in photography. The main other requirement is that the photographs have to be of a really high standard, demanding but achievable for most dedicated photographers. The next few slides of this presentation show some of the images I entered to successfully achieve my licenseship with the RPS. These 2 images show the techniques used to achieve shutter speed. These 2 images show a still life and the use of lighting and focusing. Nighttime photography, mono images and colourful tones, and depth of field. And so the next level of the Royal Photographic Society is the associateship level. This demands exceptional standards of photography and a written statement of intent. The entry requirements are 15 images, 15 DPIs, a book containing 30 images, or a multimedia presentation lasting up to 18 minutes, or again a qualification in photography. I spoke earlier of my development into RAW photography. This was a little scary at first, but I quickly learnt the huge benefits there are of shooting in RAW. I will never look back to shooting in JPEGs again, although they do have their place. The benefits of shooting in RAW for those less experienced in this area are as follows. An achievement to the highest level of quality the camera will produce. Records greater levels of brightness and contrast. You can easily adjust over or underexposed images in the processing stage, although it is best to get this right in the camera to begin with. You can adjust the white balance. You gain better detail. Shooting in RAW maintains all of the data, whereas shooting in JPEGs, the camera does the work for you and therefore processes it and compresses the image. You get a better print. You have a more efficient workflow, and it's also what the professionals use. There are a few downsides of shooting in RAW, but you can get over these quite quickly in my view. You do the processing when shooting in RAW and not the camera, and that's the part I often enjoy. It does take up more memory, and it can slow the cameras down at times, but in shooting in RAW, in my view, the benefits are huge. Next is a short video presented by Photography Week. Photography Week is an online digital magazine that comes out weekly, which I often find very useful. This is a short video of using the RAW features in Photoshop Elements.
Hello, in this video lesson I'm going to show you an overview of the Adobe Camera Raw Editor. You've got two types of photographs. You've got JPEGs, which are saved in the camera. They're compressed, so they're much lighter, but they lack some of the information that you can get if you save in RAW format. And this one here is a RAW format file. If I click in the organizer and then go down to Tags Info and click on Information, we can see that this file is a .cr2 file. So that's a RAW file that's been produced by a Canon camera. So it's not been compressed and turned into a JPEG, therefore it's got much more information for us to work with. And we can work with it in the Camera Raw Editor. So what we're going to do is click on the supplied image here and then right click and choose Edit with the Photoshop Elements Editor. And because it's a Camera Raw file, it will automatically open up in the Adobe Camera Raw Editor, and then we can play with the colors and the tones and make the picture look better. So here we are in the Camera Raw Editor, and it's best if you think of this workspace as your digital darkroom. The RAW file is like a negative, and you're going to process it to perfection using all the controls here. And you can see it's Camera Raw version 8, and that is the version you get when you've got Photoshop Elements 12. It's the latest version of the RAW editor, and it supports RAW formats from many different cameras. And as we can see here, we've shot this on a Canon camera. Now at the top here we have a toolbar with various image editing tools, such as the crop tool, the white balance tool, and indeed the straighten tool. You can also remove red eye with this tool here, or rotate the shot with these tools. You can also preview the before and after version of the shot to see how your edits are shaping up. And here you've got a handy histogram to show you the spread of tones in the shot. Now I'm going to come back to these tools later. I'm just going to give you this overview first of all to introduce you to the key parts of the RAW editor. Here we've got useful metadata about how the photograph was captured with our shutter speed here and the aperture setting used as well. And you've also got things like the ISO setting, so you can see whether the shot is likely to have lots of picture noise if you've used a fast or high ISO speed. Next we have the basic editing tab, and that enables you to change things such as the colour. So if the white balance is wrong, this shot's looking a little bit too yellow on the skin tones, it's a little bit too warm perhaps, we can tackle that later. And then in this section here you can adjust things like exposure and contrast to get a healthier range of tones. And down here we can fine tune things such as colour, and we've also got the option to zoom in for a closer look by clicking here, or indeed you can right click and choose a value from the pop-up menu. But I'm going to right click and go back to fit in view. So that's a quick overview of the basic tab, and we have two other tabs in Photoshop Elements Raw Editor. We've got the Detail tab, which is this one here, so I'll click and show you that. You can sharpen up the shot, so bring out more detail in soft focused areas and give them more impact, and you can get rid of nasty noise as well using these sliders here, which is very useful if you've used a very fast ISO speed. And finally we have the Camera Calibration tab. If you click here you can then jump to different camera profiles. It's a bit like being on location with the camera and using different menu settings to change the tones and the colours. For example, you could go to Camera Portrait and you'll get colours and tones that suit portraits, for example, or you could try a landscape and you can see the colours and tones are changing quite dramatically with a click. Let's go to Camera Neutral, and a profile like this gives you more natural looking colours. They're less saturated, the tones are fairly flat, and you could then fine tune them using the basic tab to get the look that you want. But I'm going to go back to Adobe Standard, and then we can tweak the colours and tones using the basic tab in the next few video lessons.
Before moving on to how I showcase my work, I'm going to list the equipment I use in my photography today. Okay, so the hardware I use today includes a Nikon D7-100. This comes in a DX format, which means I can still use the lenses I've got from when I had the Nikon D3-200, which I still use as my backup camera. I have a variety of lenses, which include an 18-55mm lens, an 18-105mm lens, and a 70-300 zoom lens. I have battery grips for both cameras and wireless and cabled remotes, a flash gun, a variety of ND filters, a Manfrotto tripod and a Manfrotto monopod. The software I use is mainly Photoshop CC and occasionally Lightroom 6 and Elements 11. I also use Photos to exe65 and Power Director for making movies. I often enjoy showcasing my work to either family, friends and other photographers. I have a website with an online gallery. I've also produced a photo book containing around 45 high quality prints. And for the past couple of years I've produced wall calendars too. At the beginning of 2014 I started to successfully sell some of my work through the website as either mounted or framed photographs. In October this year I held my first, albeit small, exhibition as part of the Let's Get Crafty event in Pennycook, which was a huge success for everybody involved. I was really pleased to see my work featured along with an interview with myself in May's edition of Digital Camera World magazine. I've since been approached by many other photographic magazines if they could use some of my images for a variety of topics being covered, so that was a pleasure to be part of. Over the last few months I've shown an interest in portrait photography, and you may recognise a familiar face here. So finally, I hope you've enjoyed this whistle-stop tour of my photography and how it's developed over the past few years, and I will now end with a short slideshow of some of the photographs I've taken around Scotland, with a little bit of England thrown in. Thank you for listening.